we're going to create a bookmark. I can't tell you how many of my clients have asked me to create these for them for their ebooks. We're going to go through it from start to finish. So we're starting with a pretty straightforward bookmark image that I searched for in Canva. And we're going to create a cover for this, and we're going to do a design for the spine as well, and we're going to make it look realistic. So let's start. I am using the selection tool and it's picked up the book, so that's great. Now I'm holding down the shift key and I'm clicking, and I'm going to select the next book and the book after that. I'm just going to add in a few of these pieces. I'm holding down the shift key that it missed. So I've already designed my book cover and I've already designed my spine. So I'm going to start with the book cover. So I'm going to select these layers. I'm going to right click and I'm going to hit duplicate layers, and I'm going to move these into our book pile file. In our book pile file, we're going to right click on these and we're going to convert them to a smart object. So don't worry if the image is too big, because we're going to shrink it. The nice thing about putting these into a smart object is they don't lose their resolution or shape or anything if you create a smart object. So we're going to hit Command T and then hold down the Option key while we drag one of these handles. And what this does is it centers the scaling, so it scales both X and Y at the same time. So it makes it a little bit faster. Now we're going to add our spine image in here. So we're going to duplicate these layers and move them over to our book pile file. Now we're going to make these into a smart object like we did with the cover. Hit Command T and hold down the Option key and shrink your spine. Now you're going to rotate this, and holding down the Shift key, it will snap to 90 degrees. Okay, we've got our cover in, we've got one of the spines in. I'm going to rename these layers and cover, and then always good to name your layers. We're going to duplicate the spine layer by hitting Command Option and Shift and dragging down. Now the other thing we need to do is add the cover onto this book that's laying on its side. So we're going to grab the cover, hit copy and paste. Hit Command T, and with the Command key held down, you're going to drag each of these corners to match up with each of the corners of the cover of the book lying down. So this is the top left corner, top right corner, bottom right corner, and bottom left corner. Now we're going to want the cover to be on the top here of our layers, and I'll explain in a minute. We're just going to select the other layers and we're going to create a clipping mask of the pile of books. And what that's going to do is that if you have any layers that are outside the bounds of the books, it's going to cut them off. So we're going to just extend these spines out just a little bit so it starts getting this roundness of the spine where the edges hit. Now you'll notice the spine on the top book that's standing up, it's not showing anymore because it's underneath the stacked books. If you hold down the Option key and click on the book pile image, we're going to grab this spine so that we can place it above the cover. So just grab up until the edge of this shadow. With the book pile layer selected, hit copy and paste. Now if you just do that, it's great because it's just in the same exact spot that your selection was. We want to drag this to the top here. We're going to rename it Top Spine. This way it's above the other cover and the spines. We're going to double click on it. We're going to give it a color overlay of this same dark color that was on the cover. We're going to hit multiply so that we get a little bit of the shadow in. We're going to hit OK, and now we're going to show all the other layers. And it looks like we have a little bit of a hole where the cover is. So I'm going to hit Command T and hold down the Shift key and just drag it a little bit out. With the cover selected, I'm going to give it just a little bit of a drop shadow. Not a big one, just a little one, because we are still going to add a drop shadow to the entire object, including the stacked books on the bottom. So, selecting my drop shadow, I'm going to lower the size so it's very small. The distance is small too. And it just gives it a little bit of a look like there's some other pages possibly. Hit OK. Now it also looks like it could use a gradient overlay, something to make it look like it's three-dimensional. So the way I did this was I hit angle to make sure it's coming from the bottom right, and I kind of just played around with the scale. The thing is, you want to make sure that it's not so opaque that you can't see the colors on the cover. I think we're going to do the same thing to the bottom cover and spines. So now the other cover, it needs a little shadow as well. This one I'm just going to do a color overlay and use that same color, and I'm just going to lighten the opacity just a little bit. Now it looks like we need a little bit of a shadow where the top book is sitting on this book that's stacked. So I'm going to create a new layer, and I'm going to keep it within the bounds of the book. And so I'm going to keep it in the clipping mask. I'm going to grab a paintbrush and I'm going to just brush right where I want this shadow to be. And it's in this dark color. So it's still not dark enough. So I'm going to hit multiply under the blend modes. I'm going to hit Command T just so I can reshape this. Holding down the Shift key so I can just modify the vertical shape of this, and the Option key so that it shrinks it from the center. I'm going to just shrink it so, and that looks great. It kind of looks like it's sitting there and it's adding a little bit of a shadow where it's hitting the book. Now the spines look like they need a little bit more blending shape, right? So let's add a gradient overlay for each of these. We're going to have it go vertically, so it's just hitting from the top to the middle of the book. We're going to hit multiply, and I'm going to hit the opacity just a little bit more of this, and then I'm going to scale this back just a little bit so it's not going too far down the book, down the spine. Maybe a little bit less opaque. We want it to be slightly darker than the shadow that we have on the cover. That looks pretty good. Now holding down the Option key, you can duplicate this gradient overlay into the other spine layer. So I'm going to hit Option and I'm going to drag it up there, and there we go. That looks pretty good. Now the next thing we're going to do is add in a background color so we can see what we're doing for the rest of the drop shadow. We're going to add one for the entire set. So we're going to select all of our layers. We're going to drag them into a folder. We're going to call this book group. And we're going to double click on this and we're going to add a drop shadow. So in here we want to make sure that the size is large enough and that it's kind of moving in one direction and that it's dark enough and with a little bit of a spread because you want it to have a little bit of a shape. And there we go, we have a complete book mock for an ebook.